Hey everybody, I am Tommy and you are on The Love Boat. What's happening this evening? Jane Aldrich, good to see you. Hey Roberta, smack that like button, says Roberta. And you know what's great advice. Do that for me. I would appreciate the heck out of that. Kristen Melinda, good to see you. Glad that you're here. Taylor Miller, welcome. Ahoy, crew. I like it. I like the ahoy. I like it. I like it. I like it. So let's see who else we got here. Brock Bandy, looking good there, wielding power. DS Kitty, hello Diane. Glad that you are here. Let's see, what do we got? What do we got? Crucial Flow Research. Epstein, there you go. This is a shite show. So this is, honestly, I have never, ever come across anything like this in my life, people. This is going to be one of the most wild shows I've ever done, I promise you. It's one of those shows that as I was putting it together, hello, Lisa Ayers, as I was putting this thing together, I was thinking to myself, you know what? I'm glad I'm doing this outside the U.S. because I'm going to crap on a bunch of people today. Pooh Bear, good to see you. The Bee Lady, howdy, glad you're here. Chad Singer, Paratrooper Chad, hello, South Florida, I love it. Greetings, Tommy, from wonderful Minnesota. Love Minnesota, I really do, love Minnesota. This is a very painful thing to talk about. Dane Young, how are you? I did a lot of stuff on Epstein, and I was one of the people that, you know, like everybody else, nobody believes that this guy killed himself. And I came at it with a slightly, your first ever live boat. Jim, good to see you. I love that. Well, welcome. Everybody give Jim a hello. How are you? Good to have you here. I came at this with a slightly different perspective, right? Everybody thinks that Epstein didn't kill himself, right? We call it Epsteining, right? It's become a verb. Barbara, good to see you. I'm glad you're here. It now is literally a verb. To Epstein yourself means to commit suicide, but not really commit suicide. You got Epsteined. This is one of those things that, because I spent a crap load of time in federal prison, and I spent a lot of time in the SHU, segregated housing unit, which is where they put people who are a threat to themselves. Yukon Crignelius, how are you? They also would have had to put him there just for his own protection. Right? He had a messed up case. Kellyanne, good to see you. Timothy Glass, I hope you're doing better, Timothy. I said threw a bunch of ones last night for you from here. Tony's Hooter, there you are. Tony's Hooter, I know that this is not usually your cup of tea, but you've got to stick around for this one because this is really messed up, people. This really is messed up. So as I was saying, I came at this from the angle of, you know, they said there were 3 cameras in the segregated housing unit. 3 cameras. 2 of them weren't working. And I said, there is no way on God's green earth that there were 3 cameras in the segregated housing unit. As it turns out, that simply wasn't the truth. And the more that things are coming out, we've got to see a lot of this. And most of you probably saw the clip of film that they've been showing to kind of prove their whole theory. Now, the problem with this is they're lying a lot. And the question is going to become why? Why? Tools, Dan Bongino might resign over this. That is a rumor. I had heard actually, but I'm in South America. We had actually saw a thing that popped up that said he had resigned over this. He has not yet. But I'll tell you what, I'm disappointed in Dan Bongino. I'm disappointed in Pam Bondi. The more that I look into this, the more I'm disappointed in everybody involved. And when I lay this all out and I tell you my theory on the back end, first, I'm just going to lay out facts. There's nothing that I'm going to be doing in the beginning of this that is anything but a fact. So I wish this was all theory because it would probably be a little bit easier to palate, right? A little bit easier to swallow. This is really disturbing stuff. It really is. What is going on in my old country is terrifying. But from the beginning, I said there has to be way over a dozen, probably a couple of dozen cameras that are in the SHU. They released a video. And the big thing that people kept talking about is that the video was missing about 60 seconds of film. And it's actually worse than that. When you look at the metadata on this, you will see that they spliced, and I have that here. We can look at it later. But they spliced 2, basically they spliced 2 recordings together. And I know they're not recordings anymore. You know, they're kept on digital, they're digital assets, but there were 2 digital assets spliced together. And Pam Bondi was asked at a press conference with President Trump in the Oval Office, right? With them as well was Marco Rubio. And the question was brought up about this, and Pam Bondi said, you know what? This has been happening at this facility forever, meaning every single night, every night, 1 minute of film is disappearing every night in that prison. BS. And I'll tell you something, that prison's shut down. So they can really get away with a hell of a lot of whatever kind of BS they want to pump out, because right after this guy got killed, they shut down that facility. A lot of times you'll hear people say, that's the same prison that Diddy is at. It isn't, right? It's not. It's a detention center. It's not a prison. It acts exactly like a prison. They follow the same diet menu as the Bureau of Prisons. So it's treated like any other prison in the BOP, but it's not. Hello, Rocket Queen. How are you? These are people that normally are waiting to go to trial. These are not people that are already convicted, or they're people that got convicted, believe it or not, on misdemeanors that was so low, right? Or felonies that were so low that they're not going to do more than a year. And there are some federal crimes that will get you sentences lower than that. But it's more like a county jail for the feds, right? When I did my time in the feds, I never went to a men's detention center, an MDC. That never happened. I went to a county jail that the federal government paid the state to babysit me. A ton of money, by the way. It's an unbelievable hustle. But a lot of people think this is Diddy's prison. It is not. He was in Manhattan, not Diddy. Jeffrey Epstein was in Manhattan. Diddy is in Brooklyn at the men's detention center in Brooklyn. They're very similar facilities in a lot of ways. They're both antiquated to beat hell and probably should both be shut down. Lilac, good to see you. Glad you're here, Amy. Nevertheless, the lies that are coming out about this are starting to be really evident. On the 6th of July, the government came out with a couple of documents. These may be difficult to read because of the size of them, but don't trip. It's not that important anyway, because I can read them to you. But I really just want you to notice a couple of things about this anyway, right? Let me do this real quick and get rid of that comment so that everybody can see this a little better. This is from the U.S. This is from basically the feds and the Department of Justice. The U.S. Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation put this memo out on the 6th of July. As part of our commitment to transparency, the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation have conducted an exhaustive review of investigative holdings related to Jeffrey Epstein, blah, 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 blah. What's important is this. At the top of this, there's nothing except this generic heading that says U.S. Department of Justice and Federal Bureau of Investigation. That's not normally how these documents go. More importantly is page 2, right? And I'm going to review with you all of the stuff that this says. But this is page 2. Do you see that line down there that doesn't have a signature on it? That line didn't actually exist. I put that there. But I pulled these directly off of the Department of Justice's website. And I put that line there to highlight the fact that nobody signed this. We go back to page 1, and there's no heading to tell you who wrote this. This was written by nobody. This was signed by nobody. And the general gist is 6 things that came out from this. 1, they did an exhaustive review of Jeffrey Epstein. Number 2, no further information will be released. Does that sound like it goes against everything that everybody involved in this said? Pam Bondi said, I have the client list on my desk. Jeffrey Epstein's client list. I have it on my desk. I'm going through it. Said this on a news program, right? Dan Bongino said he was backstage, right, in the green room waiting to go on, I believe it was Fox at the time. He was waiting to go on there, and he was talking to a reporter who told him that in no uncertain terms that Jeffrey Epstein was an asset, right? He was being worked by a Middle Eastern country, didn't say which one, a Middle Eastern country as a operative, as an information asset. This guy was out working for another government gathering information. Now, whether he knew he was an asset, sometimes you get used without knowing you're being used. I don't buy that. I don't think anybody listening to me does, but we'll give the benefit of the doubt that maybe, but Bongino said that he knew, right? This person told him in no uncertain terms, and this is an ace. That's the term he used. This guy was aces. Really fantastic reporter, always did the homework, didn't want to say the person's name. But what's disturbing about it is Bongino said this with a you-know-what eating grin on his face. You know what I mean? He was so happy to talk about this. This was, of course, before he became the director of the FBI, right? At the time, he was just a news guy. And he said he is definitely working for a government. So we have Bondi, right? We have Bongino, and then we had Kash Patel. And Kash Patel, during his confirmation, Marsha Blackburn asked him some questions, very pointed ones. She said, I've been investigating this. I've been looking into this for years, and I get stonewalled. She named Dick Durbin as the guy that was stonewalling her. He was keeping her from getting the client list. Everybody involved in this says that they have seen a client list. Then they all turned on a dime, right? No client listed, no evidence of blackmail, no third parties involved. Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. These are the 6 things that you will take away from this. Exhaustive review of Jeffrey Epstein. No further information will be released. No client list, no evidence of blackmail, no third parties involved. Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. There's a lot of problems with this for anybody that is being paid attention. Let's do this real quick. This right here came directly out of Miss Gouffre, the woman that died recently. She was the one who the prince, right, had molested. And this says, the footage, let me get it on a better. I used to be watched by Epstein's hidden cameras, which I have seen myself. The FBI have the archive footage showing me being abused by other men as blackmail. Other men. This is kind of essential because other men means not Jeffrey Epstein and not the prince. However, what we're being told now is that that didn't happen. As they went through this stuff, get this, you're going to love it. 300 gigabytes of data, along with an absolute cache of physical evidence, 10,000 downloaded videos and images of illegal child sex abuse material and other pornography, right? Over 1,000 victims. 1,000 victims and 10,000 downloaded images, or 10,000 downloaded videos rather, would lead you to believe that every one of these victims had to have had what? 10 videos of them? The government wants you to believe, right? The government wants you to believe that the only person on any of those videos is Jeffrey Epstein. Huh? 10,000 times Jeffrey Epstein molested a kid? That's what they want us to believe. He was the super pedo, apparently. If you divide 365 days, just for laughs, because it doesn't mean that he would have done this once a day, but if you were to divide that into 365 days, you come up with about 27 years. Jeffrey Epstein didn't live on this island. He flew all over the place. He was constantly in other places. How did this man pull off 10,000 of these himself? The answer is pretty simple. He didn't. And it's disturbing because the victims who talk about this, they don't say that. There's a victim named Sarah Ransom. Sarah Ransom in an interview said she wants Ghislaine Maxwell to die in prison. Very open about this. She said that woman needs to die in prison because I've had to hide for basically all of her life. She's terrified. But she said that she was raped at a minimum of 3 times a day. And I don't say grape, right? Grapes are fantastic. We use grapes to make wine. They taste great. They're a fruit. Rape is disgusting, right? And it's violent and it sucks. I'm not gonna play the word games things with you here, I promise. But this woman said, I was raped at a minimum 3 times a day, not by Epstein. So she didn't say Epstein raped me 3 times a day. She said men raped her 3 times a day at a minimum. And she said, and I was one of a ton of girls down there. It's the word she used. All of these victims. Now, the government has said, we want to protect these victims. These are underage victims. And I understand. I absolutely understand why you would want to protect underage victims. However, it's 2025. right? You can pixelate anybody out of a picture, right? I could do that, and I suck at this. There would be no problem whatsoever with the technology that we have to remove, right, the kids, the victims, the people that were raped, to remove them from any of these images. They're not the one that is important in this. Don't get this wrong. We need to take care of them, all that. But the people that did it to them, that's who we're talking about. That's what's important right now, because justice isn't happening for people like Miss Ransom. And certainly for Miss Gouffre. We don't know what happened to that girl, right? And when it happened, I said, you know, it does seem kind of fishy, but you know, you never know. Maybe it just was a medical thing. I don't think there's any chance in hell it was a medical thing. This was somebody that could absolutely, with authority, say, hell no, I was pimped out to other men. And we have pictures of her with other men. This was a very solid witness, right, that could prove just how bad that this really was. And she's dead. You can't hear her story, right? She died. A really unusual death that didn't seem to make a whole hell of a lot of sense. We have discussed this picture often on the boat. This picture hung in Jeffrey Epstein's New York townhouse. That picture, that painting rather, hung in his living room. It's obviously the former president, Bill Clinton, wearing a dress and pumps. And I've said on here many times, there's obviously some symbolism in this. This guy was his bitch. And we know, but because the current president of the United States of America, when he was running for president, he was asked about Bill Clinton. He said, nice guy, right? He said, he's a nice guy, but he's going to be in a lot of trouble because of that island, right, that Epstein had. And the fact that he went to that island a bunch. Now, magically, there are no Johns. There is a woman serving an amazing amount of time in prison for selling children, selling underage kids for sex to no one. She is the pimp that pimped to no one. Apparently, all of that was just to Epstein. Is anyone else buying that? For real. If you think that's utter horse hockey, put a deuce in the chat. There's something seriously wrong with all of this. And the BS that is coming out about it, what really got me going about this, right? This systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. This comes directly from the July 6th memo that I just showed you the first and second page of. No heading, no nothing, just a blank generic and no signature. So no one can ever go, yeah, you know what? I mean, everybody involved in this can say, I didn't write that. It had nothing to do with me. I didn't write that. Nobody did. This thing magically appeared, right? Just magically appeared. No signature, no nothing. Does that sound normal to you? Because it isn't. Now, again, I put that line there to emphasize that normally in the government, whoever drew that up and wrote that would sign it. There would also be a heading to give you an idea of whose desk it emanated from. Like, this is from the director of the Bureau of Prisons, or this is from the head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. No, this was written by nobody, signed by nobody. This stinks. Doesn't make any sense at all. But they said, we did a systematic review, revealed no incriminating client list. It didn't say, it didn't review, it didn't reveal a client list. It didn't reveal an incriminating client list. What the hell does that mean? If you listen to how things are worded in this, it sucks. Every single time they say something. There was also no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals. There was evidence, obviously, because what they said was there was also no credible evidence. That would lead me to believe that there was evidence, but that our government decided that evidence wasn't credible. I guess people like Miss Ransom were lying. Odd, though, because we convicted a pimp. That's what Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted of. Pimping, pandering, selling underage people for sex with adults. She's in prison for it, but apparently there was no credible evidence that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals. And this investigation did not expose any additional third parties to allegations of illegal wrongdoing. Of illegal wrongdoing? everything they worded gave them, they're tap dancing. They're walking a tightrope of BS. What needs to happen in situations like this is not for the people that are investigating it to make a decision, right, and not release any of this stuff, especially when the guy sitting in the Oval Office promised this is exactly what he was going to do. The guy that's running the FBI promised this is exactly what he was going to do. When Kash Patel was going through his hearings, Marsha Blackburn held his feet to the fire. And she said that she was being blocked by Dick Durbin, right? He was blocking her constantly from seeing this client list. What client list? The same one that Pam Bondi said she had on her desk when they were asking her about this. Every single person involved in this has said that these lists exist. They've talked about all of the different flight logs and all of the different information. And they said things like, I think you're going to be shocked when you see the names that are on this, right? This kept coming out. Yeah, these are people that these are names you're going to know. From that to there was no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals. No credible evidence. Our government, your government, decided not credible. So we're not going to tell you about it. We're not going to let you see it. We're just going to bury it. This is a problem. I mean, this is a huge problem. And I've been covering this for a really long time. And I took it from the angle of I know what the shoe looks like in a federal prison because they're all designed basically the exact same way. There's really not much difference between one and the other. So let's take a look at this, right? This is kind of what a shoe looks like, although it's multi-leveled, right? There's top tiers, bottom tiers, but that red box you see right there is Epstein's cell. That yellow section that you're seeing right there is what the camera showed. So Epstein's cell is in a blind spot. Now, there were over a dozen cameras, not 3. There were over a dozen cameras, but none of them recorded except this one. And it's missing 1 minute of tape or whatever you want to call it, right? But the metadata, right? And I did not know how to read any of this. I had to have somebody that helped me. But this shows that there are 2 MP4s, right? There are 2 digital assets in this spliced together. Not 1, 2. Why did you have to splice it together? And why is there a minute missing? All of this sucks. But let's get back to this. Let's get back to this. That's Epstein's cell. The first report that came out on Epstein way back in the day, right, said that Epstein was in his cell, right, at the FBI's independent review of the footage confirmed that from the time Epstein was locked in his cell at around 10:40 p.m. on August the 9th, 2019, until around 6:30 a.m. the next morning, nobody entered any of the tiers in the segregated housing unit. How the hell would you know if that is the only angle of a camera that you got? That doesn't show the stairs, doesn't show if somebody's going up or down the stairs. That's the only thing it shows. And you're not seeing his cell. You're not seeing if somebody went up the stairs. And I got a question for you, because this doesn't make a fart bit of sense. They don't lock guys down at 10:40 p.m. That doesn't happen in the SHU. I promise you. In fact, you don't get locked down in the SHU because you don't leave your cell. The segregated housing unit segregates you from population. You're not going in and out. They're bringing food to the cell. Your shower is in your cell, right? Everything is there. You're not going in and out, and certainly not at 10:40 at night. However, the first time they did a report, they said that at approximately 7 p.m., this is the new report, contrary to BOP policy, but with permission of a unit manager, Epstein is permitted to place an unmonitored telephone call to a number with a New York City area code. An unmonitored phone call. I can't begin to tell you what that did to me when I read it. Let me tell you how you make a phone call in the segregated housing unit. You take a piece of paper and you slide it through the door so that it sticks out and it says phone please on the outside of it. They take this thing that is huge metal. It's got 4 wheels on it, right? It's probably 2.5 feet by 2.5 feet. Big old chunk of metal plate with 4 wheels on it. And a tower that comes up. And on that tower is what looks like a payphone, except there's nowhere to put quarters or whatever. But it's a payphone. It has the exact same appearance. And they wheel it to your cell and they open the food slot and they slide the phone into you and you dial it and you hang out right there. You have to basically lean your face into the food slot in order to make a phone call. Unmonitored? So what, they gave him a cell phone? And this unmonitored call apparently went from 7 p.m. to 10:40. He got a 3-hour and 40-minute unmonitored phone call. Are you woofing me? I will tell you something. This is the first man in the history of the Bureau of Prisons to ever make a phone call from the SHU that was unmonitored. You got any idea how many policies that breaks? It's fascinating, is what it is. It's absolutely fascinating. They had to go back and look at the logs to see the number that was dialed because he was unmonitored. If he had done it through that phone, we would have heard every single word that he said, who he was talking to. Now, allegedly, that was supposed to be his mother. Purportedly, this was to speak with his mom. In all actuality, Epstein speaks with someone with whom he allegedly has a personal relationship. After the call, Epstein is returned to his cell where he remained without a cellmate. The initial report said he was locked down in his cell. This is not the one that came out on July the 6th. This was the original report. Hey, Renee B., Archie's mom, good to see you. They said he was locked in the cell at 7 p.m., but that's not true. He didn't get locked in his cell until 10:40 p.m., which means there was 3 hours and 40 minutes where this dude, I don't know where he was, right? They don't tell us, but he wasn't on film, right? So if you go back to that shot, maybe they left him walking around wherever he wanted to be, but wherever it was, it did not appear on film, right? We've looked at that. Everybody has seen that now. So he must have stayed, in theory, on his tier, right? On the tier that is just right next to where, you see how that red box there? So across the hall would be a cell directly across from it. And then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, what is it, 5? No, it's 4. 4 cells per side. Did he walk up and down that hall, right? Where did he hang out? Because we never see him on the camera. We see him for a split second, but 3 hours and 40 minutes, this dude was out of his cell. That doesn't make any sense, people. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. When you're in the segregated housing unit, you're not allowed to hang out. It doesn't really work that way. And when the OIG determined that at approximately 10:40, a CO, right, that's a corrections officer, believed to be Officer Noel, carried linen, right, or inmate clothing up to L tier, which was the last time any correction officer approached the only entrance to the segregated housing tier in which Epstein was housed. Here's my question. If you can't see, if you can't see that entrance, how the hell do they know that was the last person? And we have to take this person's word for it, right? But we don't even know who that person is because it is a corrections officer believed to be Noel. People, this is not how anything in the Bureau of Prisons takes place. You got to believe me on this. At any given time in a segregated housing unit, you will have, at the most that I've ever seen in my life, 3 staff members working. You got 2 staff members that sit at a desk, and sometimes, not often, you have a rover. You got this person that helps at certain times of the day so that you can help inmates get out to the cages, because inmates are allowed to get out for 1 hour a day. It's the 23-and-1 that you hear people talk about all the time. You're locked down 23 hours a day, you get out for 1 hour a day. In the morning, usually somewhere between 5 and 8 a.m. And at that time, there are extra employees that come in to help move inmates around. At night, 2 employees. And you can't figure out which of the 2 employees it is. In your report, but you're taking the person who you're not sure, their word for it, that they were the last person, right, that saw Epstein and that nobody else went up there. This is so bad, it's comical. I'm not kidding. This is comical. Sandy Wandy, good to see you. This sucks. And the question starts to become why. And well, there's a new book that just came out. It's written by a guy named Dylan Howard. Dead Men Tell No Tales. It's Epstein. Dead Men Tell No Tales. Spies, Lies, and Blackmail. This is a hell of a read. In this, they interview a cat named Ari Ben Mashani, right? Ari Ben Mashani. He was an Israeli spy, right? Worked for the Mossad. And this dude said, absolutely unequivocally, this guy, Epstein, worked for the Mossad. Plain and simple. And that this entire operation, Little James Island, and then Big James, the one that was right next to it, the two islands that Epstein owned, right, that all of the flight logs and Bill Clinton and all these people allegedly went to, right? That was all set up by the Mossad, according to Ari Ben Moushani in this book. He says, no two ways about it. And it was what they call a classic honeypot operation. And the honeypot operation, you're probably all fairly familiar with this. Here's what happens. My flabber has been gasted. That's right, Roberta. I think a lot of people's are. Hey, Blitz, good to see you. This is absolutely insane. It really is. This is absolutely insane. Ari Ben Moushani not only said that Epstein was an asset for the Mossad and that the classic honeypot operation was this time done with kids, because getting someone to have sex with someone and maybe taking some images of it or whatever, that gives you some leverage. But you could have a stand-up cat that just goes, you know what? Screw you. I'm sorry. You're not going to blackmail me. Tell my wife. I don't care. I'm not going to do that to my country. I'm not going to do that. Try that if it's a kid. You talk about blackmail, which means that the Mossad, according to this cat, was completely cool molesting kids if it meant they could get some information to have leverage against our country, the United States of America, to use that leverage to, I don't know, get more military aid, right? Get more whatever kind of aid, who knows? To get us to help bomb if something was going on in Iran and they wanted to take out nuclear reactors, whatever the case may be. But imagine the leverage that you would have on somebody that you have images of with a kid. I talked about this the other day. In the United States, the CIA trains out at a place that they call the farm. There is the equivalent of that in Israel. And it is where they train people who are going to go to work for the Mossad, right? Yes, Epstein was Jewish, to be sure. But above the door, it says, by any means necessary. I told you that the other day. Well, I guess that's literal, isn't it? By any means necessary, which means if you're going to take kids and sell them to adult men to have sex with, if that will benefit your country, that is by any means necessary, isn't it? Funny thing, too, this guy, Ari Ben Moushani, his other claim to fame, according to him, is he was a handler for Ghislaine Maxwell. A handler is the agent above you. They work whatever you're doing and they sort of observe what's going on, make sure you're not screwing up, give you your assignments. They're your handler. Insanity, right? But he was her handler. Now, her father, Robert Maxwell, owned a lot of media groups. He owned one across the pond called the Mirror News Group. And he also owned the New York Daily News. He died in a really unusual, the circumstances surrounding his death are sketchy as hell. Had something to do with him, I think, falling off the back of a boat, something along those lines. But right before he did, right before he fell off that boat, you know what he did? He transferred all of his holdings that he had. So the Mirror News Group, the Daily News, these are assets. This is tons of money. He transferred those assets to someone else. Go out on a limb. Who did he transfer those assets to? You got it. Jeffrey Epstein, the substitute school teacher, right? That was his last paying job. Does this make any sense at all? I'm telling you, by the time I'm done, it's gonna really piss you off. If you think this is bad now, I'm telling you, it gets worse. Alan Dershowitz got caught up in this because he flew to that island. He doesn't say he didn't. He's one of the only cats out there that said, yep, I flew out to that island. He also was a lawyer for this guy. If you remember, he had a case out of Florida, right? And this was the case where Epstein got arrested for molesting kids, allegedly, right? He had girls that were coming in that were supposed to only give him massages. And then, of course, he would sexually assault them. And they were all 13, 14. He liked them that age. I think this is probably why he got whacked, because his job was to run this operation. And I think he was really into it. They hired a pedophile to do this, which may not have been the best idea, right? It's kind of like getting high on your own supply. It never works out for people that sell anything, right? Whether it's drugs or. But Alan Dershowitz did an interview with Sean Spicer, right? The guy that used to be a press secretary. And Sean Spicer was asking him about Epstein and everything else. And he said, yes, he had gone out to that island. And he said, I know for a fact that there are files with images, all this. He knows who they're covering up for. He said, I know their names. I know what happened. And I know why they're covering up for him. But I can't say anything, right? This guy's an attorney. He said, there is a judge involved, right? There's all this crap involved. And he can't speak about it. And he said, I'm willing to. I'll give up my right to privacy, anything, because this isn't right. This is Dershowitz. This is the guy that represented this scumbag in Florida when he was charged with molesting kids. By the way, you got any idea the deal he got out of that? Good Lord. They let him do weekends. Did you catch that? They gave him a sentence that he only had to show up and do Saturday and Sunday. So he would show up on Friday, get credit for Friday, but he would get there at about 10 minutes to midnight. Walk in, boom, you just did all day Friday. That's 1 day off of your sentence. He would spend Saturday there, and Sunday at 12:01 a.m., right? Just after midnight, he'd walk out the door. So this cat's pulling like maybe 25, 26 hours and getting 3 days credit time served. And then he gets to go out and continue to do the things that he was doing. Why? Well, let's see. This is a document that has turned up that might explain some of this. See this here? This is from that case in Florida. Let's try that again. This is from that case in Florida, right? On 9/11/08, case agent advised writer that Epstein is currently being prosecuted by the state of Florida and is complying with all conditions of his plea with the state of Florida. Epstein has also provided information to the FBI as agreed upon. Case agent advised that no federal prosecution will occur in this matter as long as Epstein continues to uphold his agreement with the state of Florida. Case agent also advised that no further forfeiture assistance will be required for the case. Case agent has requested contact writer in the event this matter moves forward on a federal basis. We want to shut the file. He's working for the feds. Catch that? So they said, don't worry about it. We're not going to prosecute you federally. Why? Because you're a snitch. Because he's doing something. He's providing some kind of information for the federal government. So not only was Epstein working for the Mossad, right? But he was also working for us. So maybe the Mossad is not the only group out there that believes by any means necessary. Apparently we're cool with that too. I don't know about you, but this makes me sick. No joke, this makes me sick. And here's the book. If you want to get an opportunity to check this out, right? Dylan Howard's Epstein, Dead Men Tell No Tales. Spies, Lies, and Blackmail. I don't know how, I honestly have no idea how we're going to recover from this as a country. I don't, because this is foul as hell. Now, let's not forget that our current president ran on this was an issue that he talked about everywhere he went, right? He was going to out this stuff. He was going to drain that swamp, and he was not going to let crap like this happen. And you know what? He shouldn't. Good God, he shouldn't. These victims were kids. Kids. And I'll tell you what, when you start looking at this and you start seeing the depth of how raunchy and disgusting all of this really is, just how depraved they're willing to go to get leverage on people, right, by any means necessary. When you start to get an idea of just how far they will go, it leads you to believe that there's nothing that they won't do. Nothing. Allegedly, do you think it's the Attorney General, FBI, and or darker forces behind things not being released? I'll tell you what. Some funny things have happened recently in the United States, one of which absolutely blew me away, and I didn't at the time. I just said to Johnny, how weird is that, right? They're no longer going to tax tips. This is fantastic for people that are out there working their butt off, trying to put their kids through school or trying to take care of a family, working as a waitress or a waiter or a bartender. Tips will not be taxed. Do you know that was passed unanimously? Go and check out how many times something in this country has been passed unanimously. Bizarre. And then that great big happy bill or whatever the hell the president was calling it, right? That bill also got passed. Within a couple of days of this July 6th memo, all of these great things started to happen. And then last Tuesday in the Oval Office, somebody asked Pam Bondi about the Epstein thing, and she was explaining how every single night, right, the prison would lose 1 minute of time off of their security system. Bull hockey. There's no way in hell that every single night at a federal prison, they're losing, right, a minute. Why in hell would that be the case? Why would that be the case? What doesn't make sense to me is why Pam and Cash would come out so strongly for the release of the files in the beginning, assuming Trump is on it. Why would he let them say they're going public? Well, let me tell you my theory on this, and you can tell me if you think I'm crazy, right? And I feel a lot safer having this theory not being in the United States of America. But here's the deal. A lot of people believe that since Epstein was definitely working with the FBI, and we've got this, Ari Ben Mashani, who says he absolutely was working with the Mossad, right? So he's working both sides of the fence, right? If that's the case, we keep talking about all of these files that Epstein has, right? 10,000 of these things, right? Videos of kids being molested. You can call it whatever you want, right? But the honeypot, the classic honeypot, to get information that you can use to blackmail. Epstein wasn't sitting on these. The Mossad would have been, right? So what happens if you start making all of these promises that you're going to do this and this and this, and then you actually see those files, right? Because there's a crap load of them. They're so redacted that they're not worth reading, but there's 20 different files that I found. And honestly, so redacted, it's worthless, but they're huge. And then all of a sudden you're looking at all these names and you're getting the exact same idea that the Mossad had. This is a hell of a lot of power. We're going to pass whatever bill we want because now we've got these people like this. There's a lot of people that said right from Jump Street, you know what? I guarantee you Trump is on those tapes. I don't think that's the case at all. I don't. I just don't. And I'm not saying that I just think that what happens is once you see that list and you go, oh my God, and you start going down the list of names, man, some of these people are still in office, right? Some of these people wield more power than anybody you're ever going to come across. These are billionaires. These are politicians. Let's not turn this over just yet. Huh? Why don't we just do the same thing the Mossad was doing? Why don't we just start blackmailing our people, passing whatever bill we want? I'm sorry, folks, if this sounds awful. And I'll tell you something. If you've been on the boat for any length of time, everybody leans one direction or another, right? Some people are all in to the left. They're all in to the right. And then there are people who just ideologically maybe line up more with one side or another, right? I am a fiscal conservative. I am very liberal in most of the things that I espouse when it comes to, listen now what I talk about with drugs and needle exchange programs and legalizing drugs as a way to protect people. But I've been talking for how long about the fact that people in our government, right? Barack Obama voted for the wall, right? Everybody on the Democratic Party voted for the wall until Trump wanted it. And then they said, hell no, right? We don't need a wall, you racist piece of crap. 300 people a day dying from drugs that are coming across that border like it's legal, right? Fentanyl kills more people in America than cancer. It's the #1 cause of death in America from the ages of 18 to 55. Horrific. You know who else has a really terrible problem with it? Israel. I don't think that's an accident. But if you're willing to sacrifice 300 people a day for a political score, then this isn't really that far off of the beaten path, is it? And I've always said, man, they both suck. They both suck. No matter which party you happen to dig, when this new administration got in there, the amount of dope coming across that border, the amount of people who are coming across illegally, they turned it off like it was a faucet. So if you had a child or a mother or a best friend, or you happen to run a channel on YouTube that talks about drugs all the time, and over the course of the last administration, probably 16 people overdosed from this channel, right? I'm pissed. The idea that they could have just turned that spigot off at any time, I'm pissed. Because it wasn't about how many people died. It was about politics. They didn't care. God forbid they give the other side a win. Well, if that's the way you feel, and then maybe you were in office and your first week in office, they tried to impeach you, right? You got impeached twice. They kept talking about how, they needed to go through everything because they thought maybe you were colluding with the Russians. I got news for you, right? This is a fact. Whether you want to believe it or not, this is a fact. The NSA has a facility in Utah, right? And I'll tell you how I know that all of this is a fact. But they have a facility in Utah, and they keep every single phone call, every single email, every single text message. If it happens anywhere in the US, it's recorded. They keep all of it. Now, they will tell you, nice. They will tell you they're not touching it. They're not going through any of that. They don't look at it unless they get a warrant and there's reason to go look at it, but they're collecting all of it, every bit. Not like you see in the movies, if somebody says, the word terrorist or something, they begin recording. Everything is recorded. So when they said, I wonder, maybe he's colluding, they knew. If he was doing it or not doing it, they knew. Every single phone call, every single text message, and every email. I don't care if you're in the White House or the shit house. Everything you're doing is recorded. Now, I went to prison on bank robbery. Most people know this. And I also went to prison for possession of firearms. I was selling guns. This was not the proudest moments of my time on planet Earth, I assure you. But they were trying to give me a charge that I had nothing to do with. And I'm not going to go to court against the feds because you're going to lose. Everybody that goes to court. It's really difficult. Unless you can buy a jury, you're probably going to lose. So I said to my attorney, I could prove I didn't do this, but it's too late now. And he said, what do you mean? I said, 6 years ago, I said, I was texting. If you guys could get my phone out of the evidence locker, because they seized my phone, my computer, and all that crap sits there until you get out of prison. Then they make you sign a form that says, we're going to destroy it. You can't get any of it back anyway. I still have the form. I kept it. I thought that was really funny. But I said to the guy, if you can get my phone out of evidence, we'll just look at the text messages and I can prove to you that their CI, confidential informant, the guy was dirty, right? Their CI was selling me guns. He was supposed to be buying them from me, right? And to bust me. He was selling me guns when they weren't around. And then he was buying stuff from me when they were around and wearing a wire. And I said, I could prove that if you could just get me the phone. You know what they did instead? The judge signed off on a warrant. And they went to that place in Utah and brought the text messages printed out on paper. Years after I did this. Years. Sitting in what they call the MP room with my attorney, looking down at this stuff going, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, they just went and got this. He said, no problem whatsoever. So I was the guy that said, what do you mean you don't know if he did this? Everything is recorded. Everything. So if he was colluding, they knew about it. Plain and simple. So now you got a guy that's super pissed off, right? And he thinks you stole the election afterwards. He doesn't think he lost. And he gets into office. If he gets a shot at that list, nothing else makes sense. Look at the press conference that he was doing. Hey, B-bombs, look at the press conference he was doing from the Oval Office. And listen to what he says when they ask a question about Epstein. Some of you probably have already seen it. He said, are we still talking about him? No lie. We have so many great things going on in Texas, and then there was the tragedy in Texas. There's so much to talk about. You want to talk about this dude? Right? Nobody cares. Are you kidding me? There's 1,000 victims, right? Which means that all of them had to be molested at a minimum of 10 times on film to come up with 10,000. That's 27 years of days. That's a hell of a lot of people that were being abused. A hell of a lot. And you know what? Now bills are passing like there's no tomorrow. Right? Now that agenda is just getting pushed through like it's the thing to do. And I lean in that direction, folks. I do. That's the direction I lean. I voted for him. I know some of you will hate me for that. I'm not very happy that I did now. Because I'm telling you, every person in that administration said, this is what we're running on. Right? Pam Bondi said, you can see it on film. I looked at it 6 times today. I have that list on my desk. I'm looking at it. The client list. Now it doesn't exist. Right? Kash Patel told Marsha Blackburn, whatever Dick Durbin is doing to stonewall you, don't trip. Because when I get in there, we're going after Epstein and everybody on that damn client list because the president wants this to end. Not anymore. Now he's bored with it. I'm not buying it. And I don't think anybody else should. Right? This is what was going on right here. Right? Plain and simple. Right? That's a president. No, it was Epstein's bitch. That's what it was. That dude was going to do what Epstein told him to do because he had video, all right, or he had audio or whatever. But that's not something you hang in your living room for no apparent reason. And allegedly, right? Allegedly, this is a cat that spent more time on the Lolita Express than Epstein himself. And the current president of the United States, man, at every single one of those campaign stops, he mentioned it, didn't he? Nice guy, but I think he's in some trouble. He went to that island a lot. Now it's gone, right? And now what we're doing is we're playing those silly word games, right? Where we word things in such a way that now it doesn't look like there's anything real anymore at all, right? Now we've got these things where, the word salad that allows you to get away with nothing, right? Here's a quote, right, from the press secretary. We have flight logs, we have information, we have names, all of this will come out. Now we got nothing. We went from we have flight logs, we have information, we have names that are going to come out to did not expose any additional third parties to allegations of illegal wrongdoing. Is there illegal wrongdoing? The hell does any of this mean? It's word salad that is put in there, right, to cover the ass of the person that didn't sign the paper because there's no name on it. There was also no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals. So there was evidence, right? But the current administration, the head of the FBI, right, all parties involved, Pam Bondi, the president, they have decided that the evidence isn't credible. The systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. So it revealed the client list, but apparently that list is not incriminating. What the hell does that mean? How about if you show it to the American people and let them decide if it's incriminating? But that won't happen. And you know why it won't happen? Because there's a lot of wicked rich people that are on that client list. That's why. There's a ton of really rich people who are on that client list. And guess what? The people that are screaming that you need to release this stuff, right, are a bunch of jokers like me, right? People on the internet that sure as hell aren't as important as, say, I don't know, Bill Gates, right? Or people like him. I'm not saying that he was there. I'm not saying he wasn't either. We're not going to know now, are we? We're not. Because they've decided that there is no credible evidence, right? Everybody there said they had the list, all of them. Dick Durbin was apparently blocking a list of names that didn't exist. Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison, right, for pimping people to her partner, I guess. 10,000 times. 10,000 times. God help us, man. 1,000 victims. But they're not going to release any of those because it would be child pornography and they don't want to re-victimize the people. You can't get the victim out of that photo. BS. Miss me with that crap. I promise you, they could easily remove the victim from that. And then boom, right? Did Trump use what he has to broker deals for ceasefires? We know the Middle East is involved. Tell you what, the first time that, they went in and bombed Iran, right? When Israel calls up and says, hey, we'd like you to go on the next bomb run with us. Who knows what they got, right? By any means necessary, it says over the door. And I used to, every time I bring it up, I go, that makes me sick. That makes me sick. Another way of putting it is the means, right? The ends justify the means. That's never a road we should go down. Sean Howard said he believes Bill Clinton is a serial rapist. Allegedly. You know what? Nothing to it. I'm sorry, but if you lived through that time period, he was, right? The bimbo explosions, I think they called them, right? They joked about these things. The what was the name of the woman that when he was in office in Arkansas? Hit her in the face. She came out with, he threw a towel to her. Said, "Get the blood off your face." Remember this? Yeah, he's not a good dude. Bill Gates said, "Well, he's dead now, so you have to be careful." Yeah, he'd never be on that list, right? Dershowitz needs to be in front of Congress tomorrow, says Dane Young. And here's the thing. Dershowitz would be happier than a pig in mud to go in front of Congress tomorrow. If I were Alan Dershowitz, I would have armed guards at my door. Paula Jones? No. This woman was black. The one that he hit in the face, I can't think of her name, but she was black. But yeah, Paula Jones was another one of them. And Jennifer Flowers. But allegedly, those two at least were willing participants. There was a black woman that came into his office when he was governor of Arkansas. Juanita Broderick, well played. Thank you. You know what? Would you believe me if I told you I knew the last name started with a B and I could not for the life of me, I would not have remembered Juanita, but Juanita Broderick is absolutely the name. And if you ever heard her talk about it, you know, sometimes you hear people say things and you go, I don't know, man. You know, might just be a political move to try. That's not what was going on with Juanita Broderick. Her interview dripped with pain at a level that I'm telling you wouldn't want to watch. It's disturbing as hell. Good evening, Cliff Ann Ferguson. How are you? Yes, it's absolutely right. It was Juanita Broderick. Busted her in the lip, right? Cut her, and then threw a towel at her. Said, "Get that blood off your face." Not a good dude by all accounts. But what they're doing now is worse. What they're doing now is worse. Make no mistake. To campaign on this, literally campaign on it. And then how dumb do you have to think we are as a citizenry to not remember Pam Bondi saying, "I got the list on my desk. I have the client list on my desk. Now it doesn't exist." Right? Watch Kash Patel and Dan Bongino when they're being interviewed, and the woman said, "You know, there's a lot of people that just don't believe that this was a suicide." And they look like, you know, when hostages have to read things off of cards after they get taken prisoner in war, and they go, "They're treating us very nicely. America, the imperialist pig, should back out of." That's what it looked like. The two of them looked like they literally were hostages. Dan Bongino looked like he wanted to die. Now go back and look at Dan Bongino talking about his friend, right before he went on at Fox or whatever, telling him that without a doubt, Jeffrey Epstein worked for a Middle Eastern country as an asset. I would say that country is Israel, right? No two ways about it. It made Bongino sick. I agree with you. He looks like he's passing a kidney stone. Nevertheless, he's saying it's a suicide. It's not. There's no way in hell it's a suicide. Now, I got something I couldn't pull up, unfortunately. Could not get. But you can look this up online. It's easy to find. I just could not get it to upload so that I could show it to you. But if you look at this again, and this is the segregated housing unit, special housing unit. You see Epstein's cell? There's a set of stairs right next to where you walk up. And the stairs are just out of sight, basically, of that. You see that yellow area right there of the camera. It's just out of that sight. But you can see the handrail of the stairs. Within a couple of minutes, allegedly, of when they locked Epstein down. So right around that 10:40 time that they gave us, 10:48, whatever it was. Somebody walks up that stairs wearing orange, like an orange jumpsuit. Now, that's not what the feds say happened, right? In their report, they say that it was one of the two guards that was walking up the stairs carrying clothing up the stairs. I don't know who you're giving clothes to at 9:48 at night, why you would need to be carrying an orange jumpsuit up the stairs at 10:40 at night. But more importantly, right, it wasn't folded because the orange pixelation that you see takes up the entire camera. This was a dude walking up those stairs in an orange jumpsuit. Go look at it. I promise you'll be able to find it. And you will see it. If you Google it after you leave tonight, you're going to see it. Somebody walked up those stairs in an orange jumpsuit. And if you ask me, they went right to Epstein's cell and killed him. After he spent 3 hours and 48 minutes outside his cell. Nobody in the history of the segregated housing unit has ever spent an hour outside of their cell. But they let him out to make apparently a 3 hour and 46-minute unmonitored phone call. Folks, that doesn't smell right. I've spent way too much time in the shoe to believe that BS for a hot second. You can't leave your cell without being handcuffed in the segregated housing unit. That's policy. So they open that little food slot, you stick your hands through, they cuff you up, then they open the door. And 2 guards have to walk you everywhere you go, except Epstein, who apparently could run around and do anything he wanted inside, making unmonitored phone calls. I don't know how you do that. They hand them a cordless? I mean, for real. Because if you picked up a phone anywhere in the BOP, it's monitored. So this, he either had to borrow a cell phone from a cop or they gave him a cordless. I don't buy it. Doesn't make any sense. None of it does. But I'll tell you what, it changed. It sure as hell has changed massively. And then now they do these word salad games. And you know what? I wouldn't sign my name to that either. And apparently no one else, right, in the Department of Justice or the FBI wanted to put their signature on it either. If you got here late, this is the memo that came out on July the 6th. This is page 2. See that line? That line doesn't exist. I drew that on there because I was trying to highlight that. That's probably where somebody would have put their John Hancock or maybe Jane Hancock. I don't know who wrote it. No one will ever know who wrote it. What a great out though, huh? Right? I didn't write it. You can ask Bongino. I didn't write it. Pam Bondi. I didn't write that thing. Nobody wrote it. It's the document that wrote itself. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? Here's what you know for a fact, right? Here's what we know for a fact. That case in Florida, he got to do weekends because he cut a deal and gave information to the feds. What would he be giving information to the feds about, right? We don't know this guy from Adam at this point. At this point, he's just a child molester. Let me tell you my experience in the BOP. Those aren't the kind of cats they allow to cut deals. You hurt a kid, you don't get a deal. Drug dealers, they're very happy, right, to let a drug dealer go if he gives up some huge criminal. But if there's a victim involved, they don't like letting people go who victimize somebody, let alone somebody that victimized a bunch of kids, which is what Epstein did in Florida. And he got weekends. And I did shows on it. I did a crap load of shows on it. Going, how the hell do you get weekends? People, if you could see what they did to me. And I mean, my stuff was, I wasn't hurting anybody. I mean, I guess there's no such thing as a victimless crime, right? But as a bank robber, you know, I'm sure I scared the tellers, but I never used a weapon. In fact, I was the guy that went in there and said, hey, relax, I don't have a weapon. Right? Just give me the top drawer, the bottom drawer. No one's going to get hurt here. This is about money. It's not about you. Is it likely Epstein is in a witness protection program? No, ma'am. Somebody killed him. That's my humble opinion. I don't think he's in any kind of witness protection program. And the reason I would say that is it's like a dope dealer that starts to do the dope. I don't think when the Mossad put him in place to do this, that they thought he was going to turn into the freak that he was. I mean, maybe they knew he was a child molester. Maybe that's why they picked him for this gig. But it's a stretch. It's a really big stretch to think that there was 1,000 victims, right? And 10,000 videos, and they're all of Epstein. There's no way. We know about the prince, right? Of course, the woman that was with the prince, she's dead. And a weird death. This is a scary group of people. Honestly, I remember when the Epstein killing happened, right? I was still in, and everybody inside was talking about it. And our big thing was, what kind of badass do you have to be able to get into a federal prison to kill someone? For real. And then get out without getting caught. That's not your run-of-the-mill, you know, this is a bad dude or a bad group of dudes or whatever. Mossad could pull it off. They could. They did, right? Somebody did. Nothing about the case made any sense. The pictures they showed of the inside of the cell, and he's got 25 sheets in there, doesn't work like that. Ever. You get a bottom sheet, a top sheet, a pillowcase. That's it. Nothing else. Nothing. And if he had truthfully been taken off of suicide watch within the last 7 days, he would have been in an observation cell. You know, he wouldn't have been in a cell that had anything in it. I don't mean he would have had to wear the oven mitt, right? But it would have been an observation cell. He wouldn't have been in a standard in the shoe cell. Do you think they got Epstein out of the prison and replaced him with another body? I don't. I think he was a big, huge liability to everybody involved. Huge liability. Because no matter how much you believe in your cause, right? You know, if he was doing this for Israel, if he was doing this for the Mossad, no matter how much you believe in your cause, that'll go out the window about the second month you're in a federal prison. And you realize that you're not just in a federal prison, you're in a federal prison as a freak, and everybody in there wants to hurt you. If I had to guess, I'd say he was making that 3-hour phone call, trying to figure out a way to use the information that he had to get his hot, can out of there, right? To be on the next train smoking. I'm sure he was calling handlers, and he was calling all kinds of people going, if you don't get me out of here, right, I will pull the plug on all this. You think I'm going away, right, into a federal prison as a child molester? You got it really messed up. You better get me the hell out of here. And they did, feet first. By any means necessary. I don't think they're going to go in there and give this guy a nice cush place to be. He brought a lot of heat. He screwed up massively. I'm fairly sure they killed him. I think that that's how they do business. But what's disturbing now, folks, is how business is being conducted today. Because Kash Patel said there was a list, right? Dick Durbin was protecting the list from Marsha Blackburn. Bongino, everybody involved. Pam Bondi said she had it on her desk. Everybody involved said tons of people, big lists. We got flight logs. We got all of this information. Now we don't. Now didn't happen. No credible evidence. There was no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals. No credible evidence. Crap loads of evidence, just not credible. By whose standards? The systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. That means there was a client list. Why did you have to put incriminating? You see the word bull stuff going on here? You could have just said the systematic review revealed no client list. Booyah. No incriminating client list. No, we're playing games. There was also no credible evidence. You could have said there was also no evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals. Why did you have to put the word credible in there? Because you're playing games. That's what they're doing. You got to cover your ass, don't you? Because Pam Bondi said she had a list, right? Marsha Blackburn had seen the list. Dick Durbin was protecting the list. Everybody knew there was a list. Dershowitz says he knows the names of the people on the list. He knows why they're being protected, right? But he can't tell. He'd love to. See, he's salty as hell because they're calling him a child molester. And that's no fun. Take my word for it. He's not happy about it. Maybe the phone call was Epstein trying to broker a deal out, but his usefulness was over. Barbara, I think you nailed that. In my humble opinion, that's exactly what was going on. 3 hours and 45 minutes, unmonitored. This guy got all kinds of special privileges that nobody gets. And if you want me to believe that the guards were doing this out of the goodness of their hearts, guards hate child molesters as much as inmates do. I've told the story many times on the boat, but when I was at FCI Terre Haute, there was a guard there that had come back from, he had been in Afghanistan. He's a really humorous dude. But when he would bring somebody in like Epstein, he'd start yelling as soon as the guy entered the building, Amber Alert! And he had a big Southern accent. And he would say it over and over again, Amber Alert! Amber Alert! They hate them. There's no way they would have been in there doing any kind of anything to help them out. Elon, could he hack in? Well, I'll tell you something funny. Elon Musk is now starting the American Party. I don't know if you guys have caught this, but he's trying to spin out a third party. And everything he's talking about is Epstein. Everything. He's tweeting stuff out like, the pedophile count in the Epstein case is at 0, 0, 0. He said, it's another day of the, can't remember how he worded it. It was actually pretty humorous. But everything he's doing is hammering home the fact that they ran on this, right? They promised this. Elon's pissed. I don't blame him. He got used, like everybody in politics gets used, right? When they wanted to get elected, having that smart guy who built those beautiful rockets. Have you seen them come down? Beautiful rockets. Honeybee says GPT wrote it. You know what? If it was a little bit better done, I would have agreed with you. But take those words out of this. And it really screams at you exactly what they're doing. Did not expose any additional third parties to allegations of illegal wrongdoing. Illegal wrongdoing? Is there legal wrongdoing? These are just, it's all word games designed to cover someone's ass because they've already all admitted that there's lists all over the place, right? They all came out and said, wait till you see it. Man, I was watching, I can't remember, it was the woman from New Jersey. Can't think of her name off the top of my head, but she was being interviewed and the guy said, are we going to be shocked? She said, how could you not be? How could you not be shocked? These are some of the most prominent people in our country, and they were going down and doing this with kids. Now that's all disappeared. It's all gone now. Think of the power that you wield if you have that list, right? Let's say hypothetically, right? I'm not saying that that Bill Gates is on that list, but let's just say he is. Imagine what you could do if you had Bill Gates by the short ones. Huh? That would be a fun guy to push around, don't you think? It's terrifying. But watch the press conference in the Oval Office. I mean, we've all seen Trump say, be Trump. A billion times we've all seen Trump be Trump. Watch when he starts talking about Epstein and how we're still talking about this guy. Watch how uncomfortable he is. Watch Marco Rubio, right? He's between Bondi and Trump. Marco Rubio looks like he wants to die. And when Pam Bondi starts to, when Trump's doing this speech and all that, watch her eyes. The behavior panel is going to have a field day with this. Can't wait to see it. But watch her eyes dart around the room from person to person because she knows this stinks, right? This stinks. And boy, she was put in a bad position, wasn't she? Because she was out there telling people, right? Just what he told her to tell them. Yeah, she had the list on her desk. Now there's no list. No list. Nothing credible. Nothing credible, right? No credible evidence. This systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. Should have just said no client list. All of these things are games. And you know what? I don't think the American people are as dumb as they're giving them credit for. I think this is going to absolutely blow up in the faces of the people that are doing it. Okay, so since when should the criminals on a list be tipped off? They shouldn't. First of all, here's the deal. Hey, William, good to see you, my man. Good to see you. What about his cellmate? Where was he when he was getting killed? No cellmate, apparently. The cellmate had been transferred out, I think the day before or 2 days before, which was convenient, right? And the fact that the prison got shut down covered so many sins, right? It becomes damn near impossible to do any kind of serious investigation once that puppy got closed down. Do a little research and it will blow you away that the 2 guards that were on duty pled guilty, right, to crimes because they falsified records. See, they wrote down that we were going up and checking on him every half hour. Trouble with that is by the time they found him, rigor was starting to kick in, right? He was already started. It wasn't like they had checked him a half an hour earlier. So they had falsified the logs. And allegedly, they fell asleep at their post. I don't know if any of you have ever had the misfortune of being in a segregated housing unit, right? But there's not much sleeping going on. If you're a guard there, the way that this is set up, it's like a speaker box, right? It's like a speaker box. All of those tiers that you're looking at, right? The guard sits in the middle of that room with the light on, like that area that you're seeing from the camera. They sit in what is, for all intent and purpose, a speaker box. And all of these cells have guys screaming at the top of their lungs because the guy in cell 1 will be trying to communicate with his homeboy who's in cell 10. And he'll yell, hey, Kev, you heard? The guy, and Kevin will yell back, yo, what's up? I heard. And they just do this all night long. Trust me, I spent, God help us, 5 years of my life in segregated housing units, maybe a little bit more than that. No guards sleeping, right? Unless they're pilled out, right? I mean, the only way you would be getting to sleep is if you are taking a narcotic. It's one of the loudest environments on planet Earth. What really bothers me is who took his place. No justice means somebody definitely took his place. They didn't just stop. You know what, Dane? You're right. I tend to agree with you. And what's scary is this. They don't have to continually bring in new people. They can just keep blackmailing the ones they got. And I think that's what happened. It's my opinion. You don't have to believe me. We should never let the ones in government live this down. Every question asked, every interview, every documentary, they should be brought up. I agree with you, Jake. I agree with you, man. Hold their feet to the damn fire. Victims, 1,000 kids. You know, it's like 300 people die every day of drug overdoses. That number doesn't sound bad. I mean, it doesn't. It's horrible, but 300, it's a number. If you say 300 people who have parents, if you say 300 people that have kids, 300 people that have sisters and brothers, those statistics tend to take the edge off, right? 1,000 kids were molested. That's what they're talking about. And not just molested, they were molested, right, by prominent rich people, allegedly, who would fly down to do this like it was child sex tourism. What do you give a politician that has had everything? Okay? Everything at his disposal, apparently a 14-year-old, and you film it. And what's terrifying me, honestly, I'm scared now that now we just switched, right? I guess the Mossad was doing the blackmailing, and now maybe we're doing it. I don't know. That tax thing, how many tax bills pass unanimously? That's bizarre. It really is. And that bill that they just couldn't get pushed through didn't take but a couple of days after that memo came out, right? Before they pushed that through. Because I think that there's a crap load of people. Alan Dershowitz, dead man walking. I'll tell you what, Lisa Ayers, that's what Johnny and I were talking about. He was courageous as hell with the interview that he did with Sean Spicer. I don't know if it was smart, but it sure as hell was, very seriously courageous. Did you see how many damn sheets he had in his cell when he offed himself? Like 10 sheets in a cell of a man who was supposedly a risk to commit suicide. That's right. He wouldn't have had anything extra in that cell. He did have the complexion for protection. Yep. There's a lot of truth to that, Chris. There's a lot of truth to that. None of you know what's going on, just speculation. Pretty lady, I know a damn bit more than speculation. I know that a segregated housing unit has more than 14 cameras in it, and they claim only one worked. I know that. I know that there are victims, right? We know this from their mouth, that there is 1,000 victims. I know that. There are 10,000 videos. So simple math, a person could say logically that what? Maybe one of those victims is responsible for all those, or maybe it's about 10 videos for each one of these people. But we want to believe that Jeffrey Epstein was responsible for every one of those. If he did one a day, it would have taken him 27 years. I know that in a segregated housing unit, a cat doesn't leave his cell, ever. Spent 5 years of my life in there. You don't leave your cell. That's the purpose, right? If they were going to let you leave your cell, they'd leave you in general population. When you go back to the segregated housing unit, you lock down 23-1. You get out 1 hour a day. They bring the phone to your damn door. This guy got to make an unmonitored phone call. It was out of his cell from 7 to 10:48. This stinks, every bit of it. I know that a book was just written, and in that book, right, Jeffrey Epstein is what the book is about, and it's called Spies. Let's see here. We got a picture of it. I know that this book right here, Epstein, Dead Men Tell No Tales, right? I know that Ari Ben Mashani, an Israeli spy who worked for the Mossad and was the handler of Ghislaine Maxwell, right? I know that dude said that Epstein absolutely was working a honeypot operation to gather intel on people that they could blackmail, right? I know that Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine's dad, worked for the Mossad, and that he owned the Mirror News Group in Great Britain, and he owned the Daily News of New York. And right before he died, he gave them to Jeffrey Epstein. So you're right, we don't know squat, but I know this doesn't smell right. It doesn't take a rocket scientist or to have been there to know that this doesn't smell right. I know that when this guy should have gone to prison for a hellacious amount of time for molesting a group of young ladies in Florida, right? 9/11/08, that the case agent advised Reiter that Epstein is currently being prosecuted by the state of Florida and is complying with all conditions of his plea deal with the state. Epstein also has provided information to the FBI as agreed upon. Case agent advised that no federal prosecution will occur. I know that that doesn't happen with child molesters. You don't make deals with child molesters. Our legal system, our justice system doesn't do that. They make all kinds of deals with drug dealers. They make all kinds of deals with all kinds of different criminals. Child molesters don't get deals because they hurt kids. And nobody in the real world will put up with that. People can go, you know what? Drug dealers may not be doing the greatest things in the world, right? It's kind of a sleazy way to make a living. But you can see desperation of people that didn't get the opportunities that other people did. And they go to this type of business in order to try to make money. And you can kind of sympathize or you can empathize with that. You can even think, in some cases, a guy comes home and he finds his wife of 26 years having sex with the gardener. And he blows an O-ring and kills the guy and his wife. No excuse, no nothing. But you could see how a guy who was married for that long could snap. But there's no inmate on earth that goes, yeah, I can see why someone would want to have sex with a 12-year-old. That doesn't happen. So for that reason, since nobody in the country is going to sympathize, they don't do deals with them, ever. I guess unless your name is Epstein. I know that above the door of the Mossad Training Center, it says, by any means necessary. It's a pretty disgusting sentence. They believe that the ends justify the means. So if they're getting good deals and they had to sacrifice 1,000 children to make that happen, that they're cool with that. Read the book. It'll fascinate you. I know this stinks. I know it smells really, really bad. And I'm going to keep chasing this down, and I'm going to keep looking at it. No, they're going to do everything they can to make sure that nobody finds out what really happened. But I spent a hell of a long time in segregated housing units in federal penitentiaries, and nobody walks around making unmonitored phone calls for 5 minutes, much less 3 hours and 48 minutes. I know that the report changed from the first report to the second report. I know that nobody signed the damn report that came out on July the 6th. That's odd, right? That report was written by nobody. That's where that signature should be, but there's no name there. Also, there's no name at the top of this to say from the office of, right? The Inspector General, right? Or the head of the Bureau of Prisons, or Dan Bon Jovi from the FBI. Nope. Written by nobody, signed by nobody. You're right. We're all just taking shots in the dark. I mean, we are. I mean, I'm not even being a wise ass. We don't know. We don't. But doesn't smell right. Sure as hell doesn't smell right. And I promise you, this isn't good. But on the bright side, I'm a long way away. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I really don't. But these aren't stories that you can feel comfortable talking about these days. Honestly, Dershowitz has got stones. For real, man. The huevos on that man are impressive. Because he came out and didn't just say, look, there's a list out there. He said, I know who's on that list. I know what they did. And he wants it to come out. He said, you know what? He said, I'll waive all of my rights because I got nothing to hide. Anything that has to do with I'll waive all of that. But they need to release the names of the people that did this. I also know one other thing that I find pretty unusual, right? This is the painting that hung in the living room of Jeffrey Epstein's townhouse in New York. And the one name that came up again and again and again. I got a friend that wrote a book about Epstein's death, and he was pretty convinced that Clinton did it. I always thought it was the Mossad. I really did from day one. And not because I'm a rocket scientist, but because Ghislaine Maxwell's father was Robert Maxwell, right? Who was a Mossad agent. And he owned the Mirror News Group and the New York Daily News. And he gave all of his assets to Jeffrey Epstein before his death. Why? Because Epstein was an excellent substitute teacher. The same reason that the guy that owned Victoria's Secret gave him the townhouse that picture hung in. Just gave it to him. Right? This was a guy that became a billionaire because people gave him $1 billion. Boy, that's a good gig right there. How do you get people to give you $1 billion? I don't know. Maybe you got pictures or videos of them having sex with children. All right, peeps. I'm sorry. This stuff makes me sick. It really does. It makes me sick. Pay attention to just how easily bills are getting passed. Start taking a look at what's going on. Start taking a look at at Pam Bondi. Start taking a look at Dan Bongino and Kash Patel. Because you know what? I don't think any of them are happy about this. For real, I don't think any of them are happy about this. They told the world that they were going to make the people that did this to the kids pay. And they sure as hell haven't. Right? They are saying pharmacide killed Virginia. You know, it's hard. It's just what a terrible thing, right? This is a person that got victimized so viciously, and then finally, seemed to be to have a life after everything that happened to her. Got a settlement, had some the ability to take care of her family, and then this crap happens. Well, she was a threat, wasn't she? She was stone cold proof that there were customers other than Jeffrey Epstein, because that's what the government's telling us now. Epstein was prolific as hell because he obviously molested 1,000 girls, right? 10 times a piece, 10,000 videos, and they're all Epstein. Like I said earlier, if he did one a day, it would take 27 years. And he didn't live on that island. Spent time there, but he didn't live on that island. He flew all over the place. Had a home in Florida, had a home in, I don't know if it was Wyoming or Colorado, had the place in New York. So, boy, he must have gotten really busy when he got to that island. None of it makes any sense, peeps. Between now and the next time that I see it, which is going to be tomorrow morning, do me a favor. Put a little love in your heart. I'm Tommy. This is The Love Boat. We'll see you on the next one. I love you guys. Have a good night.